Imagine starting your day with perfume instead of soap, chugging weak beer for breakfast because water might kill you, and stepping out into streets where overflowing cesspits lure pigs and dogs past piles of human waste. In the world behind the title, "Are You Serious, 18th Century?" No way this would fly today. Filth was a fact of life, so deadly that entire weekly newspapers simply counted the bodies. But how did anyone survive? And what happened when the dirt piled up higher than the rooftops? The answer is almost unbelievable. Let's dive in. And trust me, what comes next will make you want to see the next video about ordinary days in the 1700s, because those stories would be impossible today. Waking up in 17th century London didn't begin with a hot shower or a splash of soap. For most people, bathing was a rare event, sometimes months apart, because doctors warned that water could open your pores to dangerous invisible vapors. Instead, the routine started with a heavy dose of perfume or a quick rub with a linen cloth. Samuel Pepys, the famous London diarist, once wrote simply, "Did not washed." That was not laziness, it was common sense. Or so everyone thought. The richer you were, the stronger your scent. Wigs, powder, and layers of clothing helped mask what no one wanted to smell. But everyone did. Breakfast brought its own surprises. Forget coffee or orange juice. The safest thing to drink was small beer, a weak, cloudy ale brewed at home or in schools, with barely enough alcohol to notice. Even children drank it, sometimes 10 pints a day, because the city's water could leave you doubled over with griping in the guts. Milk was a luxury and spoiled fast. Small beer was cheap, filling, and thanks to boiling less likely to kill you than a sip from the Thames. The same mug passed from hand to hand whether you were at the breakfast table or a crowded tavern. Germs were not part of the conversation. If you were thirsty, you drank. If you smelled, you dabbed on more perfume. And if you wondered why everyone seemed a little ripe, that was just another morning in the 1600s. Stepping outside meant bracing for a city that ran on filth. London in the 1600s was not just dirty, it was alive with hazards. Open gutters lined every lane, channeling a thick river of human waste, animal dung, and kitchen scraps right past your doorstep. Chamber pots were emptied from upstairs windows, splattering onto cobblestones below, sometimes catching an unlucky passerby. The night belonged to the gong farmers, those unsung heroes of the cesspit. Working from 9 o'clock at night until sunrise, they shoveled tons of fermenting excrement from backyard pits, hauling it out by rope and bucket, then carting it through the slumbering city. Their reward was 2 shillings per ton, and the right to smell worse than anyone alive. Ordinances banned them from daytime work, but even at night their carts rattled through alleys, trailed by the stench and the occasional unlucky apprentice, face smeared with filth, earning pennies for a night's labor. The chaos did not stop with waste. Pigs wandered freely through markets, rooting in garbage alongside stray dogs and the odd cow, adding their own mess to the mix. In the morning, butchers haggled over half-rotten meat, while children played hopscotch around puddles of refuse. Disease thrived here, with lice, fleas, and rats as constant companions. London's weekly bills of mortality listed deaths from gripping in the guts and bloody flux as common as rain. In just 1 week of 1665, over 6,000 names appeared on the city's death rolls. For every step outside, there was a risk: slip in a gutter, breathe in the stench, or catch something far deadlier. And in the middle of it all, the gong farmer kept digging, knowing tomorrow's streets would be just as foul. Inside the barber surgeon's shop, the line between haircut and healthcare blurred with every flick of a razor. On one side, a customer might be getting a shave, and on the other, someone else was having a vein opened to drain a pint of blood. The logic was simple, at least to the people of the 1600s. According to humoral theory, bodies ran on 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Illness meant imbalance, so a barber surgeon reached for his lancet or a jar of leeches to restore harmony. Manuals from the time instructed that blood should be let to cool hot humours, and patients submitted to the ritual, convinced it was their best shot at recovery. Remedies went far beyond bloodletting. Powdered mummy, scraped from Egyptian tombs or faked in London cellars, was mixed into wine for bruises and bleeding. Dried toad, ground antlers, and even the skulls of executed criminals found their way into the apothecary's jars. When King Charles II collapsed in 1685, his doctors unleashed the full arsenal: bloodletting, vomiting, blistering, and a dose of skull ooze, all before the king finally expired. If this was the royal treatment, imagine what passed for medicine on the street. A historian might say that bloodletting was not madness, it was the best theory they had. But when plague swept through town, even the bravest barber surgeon was no match for what came next. A red cross smeared on the door and the chalked words, "Lord have mercy upon us," were the only warnings a family would get before their world shrank to four walls. In plague-stricken London, quarantine meant the front door was nailed shut and a watchman posted outside, paid to keep everyone in and everyone else out. Sometimes a coin slipped through a crack in the shutters was enough to buy a breath of freedom, or even a midnight escape. The city tried to hold the line, but bribery was as common as fear. Parish broadsheets listed new rules every week, but desperation found its own loopholes. At dusk, the air thickened with the sharp, oily stench of burning tar. Orders from the city council demanded tar and pitch fires in every street to fight the plague. Watchmen coughed in the smoke, stamping their feet for warmth as neighbours eyed each other through shuttered windows. When the bell tolled, plague carts rattled over cobblestones, the driver calling, "Bring out your dead," as doors creaked open and bundles were laid on the heap. Fumigation teams moved from house to house, burning rosemary and brimstone, convinced the right smell could drive the plague away. In the flicker of torchlight, a city once bustling with markets and gossip shrank into silence, each household waiting for the knock that meant someone inside had lost the fight. And this was only the start. Wait until you hear what the 18th century treated as a normal day. A single spark in a Pudding Lane bakery set off a chain of panic that no one in London could stop. Flames leapt from roof to roof, racing down narrow alleys lined with timber-framed houses. The city's heart was a maze of wood, tar, and straw, perfect kindling packed tight by centuries of careless building. By dawn, families poured into the streets, dragging trunks, bedding, and whatever they could carry. Some buried their possessions in gardens, hoping to find them later if their homes survived. Samuel Pepys wrote of burying his own cheese and wine, watching as the sky turned orange and the air filled with embers. The fire raged for 4 days, devouring over 13,000 homes and leaving more than 100,000 people with nothing but what they could carry. City officials issued frantic orders: tear down houses to stop the fire's path, form bucket lines, save the churches. But the flames moved faster than any plan. When the smoke cleared, the city was a blackened shell. Parliament passed new laws: no more wood, only brick and stone for rebuilding. Insurance offices opened, selling peace of mind to those who could afford it. Out of the ashes, modern London began to rise. But for the families who lost everything, the future was as uncertain as the night the fire began. Crowds packed the fields at Tyburn for every hanging, turning executions into a full-blown carnival. Vendors hawked pies and ale. Children darted between legs, and broadsheets with the condemned's last words sold fast. A good execution day drew thousands, all eager for a spectacle, sometimes more interested in the food stalls than the fate of the prisoner. Justice was not served behind closed doors. It was a ticketed event, with the gallows as center stage. But the real theatre sometimes unfolded in courtrooms. In Lancashire, in 1612, the Pendle witch trials put superstition on the witness stand. Neighbours swore under oath that a widow's curse had killed their cow, and the court took it as proof. One record reads, She looked upon the child, and it withered. 12 people hanged on evidence like that. For the accused, the difference between a curse and a crime could be a matter of life or death. A trip to the market could turn into a game of culinary roulette. Inspectors fined butchers for selling meat so spoiled it needed a dusting of cloves just to fool your nose. Court records from 1632 list vendors caught hawking stinking flesh, unfit for Christian consumption. Even bread was not safe, sometimes stretched with sawdust or chalk to bulk it out. Meanwhile, childbirth was a candlelit gamble. Parish registers overflow with entries for mothers and newborns lost to infection or fever. Midwives did their best with herbal teas and whispered prayers, but in some parishes, 1 in 5 babies never saw their first birthday. And if you dared to travel, the road brought its own brand of chaos. Highwaymen like Claude Duval became legends, robbing coaches with a flourish. One broadsheet claims Duval once made a noblewoman dance a minuet on the roadside before letting her keep her jewels. In the 1600s, danger was not an exception. It was the backdrop to daily life. Modern comforts can vanish fast, like clean water, medicine, even safety. Every leap forward rests on centuries of trial, error, and chaos. What seems unthinkable now was once daily routine. Ask yourself, what are we doing today that future generations will find just as bizarre? Drop your theories in the comments.